Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the 10th studio album from Swedish power metal icons Sabaton. Me and power metal might not be on the best of terms, all things considered, but I do have a soft spot for Sabaton, as they were one of the first power metal bands I came to really know, and also really enjoy. Records like The Art of War, Coat of Arms, and Careless Rex were not only instrumental to me learning about power metal and finally beginning to explore the genre, but they also still rank as some of my favorite power metal albums. If I were to do a top 10 power metal albums of all time video right now, Careless Rex in particular would absolutely end up on that list. There's something about the size, the scale, and the concept of that record that is just remarkable. Not to mention, it's got some of Sabaton's most infectious and thunderous songs to date. Subsequent records like Heroes, The Last Stand, and The Great War may not be perfect in my personal and humble opinion, but they are filled with some pretty tasty, consistent jams. The Great War in particular, I would say, is the strongest of those three, and it packs one of the most interesting and genuinely powerful reinterpretations of In Flanders Fields I think I've ever heard. Another thing I liked more about The Great War in comparison to Heroes and The Last Stand is that it was a much more cohesive album. Sabaton sometimes just kind of grab different stories from across different generations and compile them onto one record, but The Great War was focused specifically on the Great War, what we now know as World War I, and its emphasis on specifically stories from specifically this time, I think just made it a stronger, more unified album all around. Building on that success and momentum, Sabaton have decided that The War to End All Wars will not just be another Sabaton album, it will follow in the footsteps of The Great War, arguably standing as a sequel to that album, detailing more battles, more stories, more fantastical and tragic events from specifically The Great War and World War I. The result is not exactly mind-blowing. In fact, I'm just gonna say it right off the bat. If you don't like Sabaton, this record won't do anything to fucking change your mind. But it is fun. Like, there's not a single song on here that is not packed with big, bold, anthemic choruses and synthesizers and choirs. Joachim Broden's vocals, I love that he literally sounds like a military commander, like a general on top of so many of these, like, chuggy, militant kind of heavy metal, power metal fucking jams. It really just sells the aesthetic and the concept of the record. Tracks like Stormtroopers, The Unkillable Soldier, and Soldier of Heaven are all fantastic examples of what I'm talking about. They're all very straightforward, arguably predictable, maybe even derivative of prior Sabaton records. Like, there's nothing on here that would, like, really shock or scare you if you were even casually familiar with the band. But it's all still so well executed. I feel like Sabaton is to power metal, or rather to this specific type of power metal, what AC/DC and Motorhead were to, like, hard rock, you know? Yes, it's very repetitive. Yes, they're just doing the same thing over and over, but they're doing it so well, and they still have such a unique identity and sound and aesthetic that I'm not really bothered by it, per se. Stormtroopers in particular, I think is one of the best cuts on the record. It's destined to be a fan favorite, particularly if you're one of those Sabaton fans that just worships Ghost Division. To be entirely fair to Sabaton, though, there are some twists and turns to be found across the record. Nothing too unexpected, but just different enough. For instance, opening cut Sarajevo is driven primarily by spoken word narration detailing the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. I like how, as this song continues, it gradually gets more volatile, it gets more explosive, implementing some more aggressive power metal guitars and some heavenly choir-like vocals. There's also what will undoubtedly be the album highlight for many people, Christmas Truce, one of the most poignant and evocative and weirdly even heartwarming pieces of music that I think Sabaton have ever put out, detailing unofficial ceasefires that happened in World War I, primarily on the Western Front right around the Christmas season. Musically, it's my favorite cut on the record. There's some really dynamic, triumphant twin guitar wizardry right around the middle of this thing that is just beautiful. There's also some great keyboard and synthesizer work, one of Joachim's best vocal performances. I really like how this track kind of uses the main melody from Carol of the Bells to kind of set this Christmas atmosphere as well. Having Floor Jansen of Nightwish fame do the backing vocals on this cut is a very, very nice touch as well. And honestly, the stories told through all of these songs, which once again are based on real historical events from World War I, based on people who fought and very likely died in World War I, are fascinating. Like, they're so interesting, and it's interesting enough that I want to keep exploring so much of what this album details. I can very say I've never been this excited to do history homework. Never. Especially when, frankly, there's a lot of stuff here on this album that we did not cover in our grade 9 history class. For instance, the track Hellfighters details the battles of the 369th Infantry Regiment, also known as the Harlem Hellfighters, which was a special troop of the United States military that was comprised of mostly African-American and Puerto Rican soldiers, people of color. That's fucking cool. Or how about the track Lady of the Dark, which is all about celebrating the many victories and accomplishments and in turn the legacy of Serbian soldier Milanka Savic, who I'm now learning is the most decorated female combatant in the recorded history of warfare. Holy shit, why didn't I learn about that in history class? That's fucking cool. Hey, so, here's the thing. I was editing this video, and I was getting to the part where I tell you what my final score is. And originally, I was going to give the album an enthusiastic 3 out of 5. But then I realized I actually really, really liked this album. And this is probably the most I've enjoyed a Sabaton album since Careless Rex. It's not an album of the year contender. It's not like one of the best power metal albums ever made, but it's fun, it's consistent, it's very well made, very well structured and performed, and it is, like I said, one of the best things Sabaton have made since Careless Rex. It's the best thing they've made in a decade, in my opinion, so I'm going to go not with a 3 out of 5, as I originally intended, but a genuinely enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5. At this point, Sabaton are a bit of a one-trick pony, but they're still doing that one trick really, really, really well. So, like, fuck it. I think earlier in this review, I compared them to AC/DC or Motorhead, but maybe with this in mind, they're closer to a band like Cannibal Corpse, you know? Like, Cannibal Corpse make the same album over and over again, but nobody cares, because it's really good. Like, it's a really great album that they're remaking over and over again. And it's kind of the same thing with Sabaton at this point. Like, they've kind of even, I think, mastered what they've been doing on the last couple of albums with this particular album. It won't change your mind if you hate Sabaton, but if you love Sabaton, or even if you're just a casual heavy metal, power metal fan, you'll probably really enjoy this record. So 3.5 out of 5. I'm going inside now. It's fucking cold. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.